Hey, hello everyone. Thank you for joining. I will just wait 1 minute before we fully start with the content of this webinar, but I can already give you a big welcome and say that it's my pleasure to have you all here today for another webinar under the RGI umbrella of energy and nature. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes. A couple of the speakers are still on the way. And until then, just sit back, relax, and enjoy this beautiful introduction slide where you see birds flying peacefully over the grid. So for those just joining, we'll get started in just 30 seconds. Maybe I can already go ahead and introduce myself. My name's Liam Innis. I work for the Renewables Grid Initiative. And there I'm responsible for our activities which link to onshore environment. So how the grid and energy infrastructure, renewable energy infrastructure, interacts with nature. In this series of webinars, we aim to shine a light on good practices from around the world, around Europe and around the world, which reconcile the energy transition with nature protection. And so far, we've examined topics such as how to protect birds and bats around the grid, but also wind turbines, how to promote ecosystems and biodiversity around solar parks, and how ecological management of grid corridors and the vegetation can transform them into havens for nature and biodiversity. Today, we have a new and very exciting topic, not least for me because I'm a very keen gardener. But this one is how to use the space around energy infrastructure for community agriculture projects, and thus the name Grids, Gardens and Communities. I'm very excited to introduce you to our speakers, but before we do that, allow me to give a quick introduction and to make some quick housekeeping points as well. So we are recording, and this will be posted online afterwards. I hope that's okay with you all. And please do rename yourself according to what I've done here, just with your first name, second name, and then the organization. This will make the discussion afterwards much more intimate, and we'll be able to see who we're talking to. So for those of you who aren't familiar with us, the Renewables Grid Initiative, we are a not-for-profit based in Berlin. And we work with transmission system operators, TSOs, and non-governmental organizations, NGOs, from across Europe. I think in the meantime, there's 12 or 13 European countries on board. And we bring these maybe unlikely partners onto the same table to cooperate, to collaborate. And together we push forward a fair, transparent, sustainable grid development to enable the growth of renewables and achieve full decarbonization. That has many dimensions to it. We work on technical projects such as the integration of renewables into the grid. We work on societal projects such as participation, the democratic aspects of planning and operation of infrastructure, but also we work on environmental issues. And there we split between offshore and onshore is where I work. And this brings us then to the topic of today. I said at the start that at RGI I personally look into how to reconcile energy and nature. Now, what does that mean? It sounds like a big statement, and it also sometimes can be maybe oversimplified. But core to our mission, and really at RGI, we're convinced that the only way that the energy transition can be a success is for the infrastructure to be built in harmony with nature, and in a way which is acceptable for local communities. Now, this admittedly is not the conventional way of building infrastructure. Back in the day, it's kind of a quick and dirty approach where infrastructure is built with one mission of generating electricity and transmitting it to consumers. However, increasingly, we're seeing something of a paradigm shift, really, towards a viewpoint which doesn't just see infrastructure projects in a vacuum. It instead considers infrastructure projects holistically within the ecosystems in which they're built and as part of the communities that they're surrounded by. Now, with this shift in perspective, we can consider then how to make the most of the land around the infrastructure, whether that's grids or solar panels or wind turbines, or even to capitalize on the characteristics of the infrastructure itself to combat the other crises that we face. And there we're thinking about the biodiversity crisis, food insecurity crisis, social cohesion, as well as the energy crisis of reaching the energy transition as quick as we can. Now, this more flexible dynamic approach leaves the floor wide open for innovative projects to use the land, like I said, around infrastructure for new purposes, which directly benefit local people and create benefits for biodiversity too. And this is a win-win then, not just for those reasons, but also because local benefits can bring more local acceptance of infrastructure and of the energy transition itself. Now, this sounds like a no-brainer, but of course, there's other concerns and questions to be addressed, not least logistical, bureaucratical hurdles. And so in this webinar, we want to hear from speakers who've gained experience in this regard and are willing to answer your questions on how to get such projects off the ground. So joining me today, we have Johanna Meier from the German Energy Agency and her father, Dr. Rolf Meier, from Agenda Hürth, which is an initiative in the west of Germany, which creates citizen initiatives, of which one of them is a wonderful citizens community garden underneath powerlines. Then we have Christian Temp from Cidades and Fome, or Cities Without Hunger, a Brazilian NGO, which creates urban gardens underneath powerlines in Sao Paulo. And then finally, we have Byron Kominek, who is the owner of Jack's Solar Garden, which is a solar park in the US, an agrivoltaics park, should I say, where they combine solar energy generation with organic agriculture, but also with community action and inviting communities onto the land to be very involved. These are very exciting projects, and of course, we will leave time at the end for an open discussion. So have your questions ready and feel free to post your questions in the chat throughout this webinar. And I think that's it from me. I'll pass the word straight over to Johanna and Rolf and allow them to share their screen as well. So go ahead, Johanna.
Hello, everyone. Give me one moment to share the screen. Here we go. So my name is Johanna Meier, and this is my father, Rolf Meier. And we are very excited to be here together. Actually, it's a very special moment for me. I'm going to start and then hand over. So just a couple of words about who I am. I'm a senior expert for the future of energy supply at the German Energy Agency. And I do many different projects, but I also work on permitting processes and public participation for grids. And so it was a really nice moment to share a project with my father, who built this community garden underneath a high voltage grid. So I am just here to give you a little bit of context, and he will be actually introducing the project. And so a little bit, because not everybody is familiar with the German energy system, just to show you the transition we're undergoing. On the left, you see the electricity mix in 1990 compared to today. So the share of renewables is going up by a lot, and we are phasing out lignite coal and hard coal, and we are phasing out nuclear energy. So these are big challenges for the energy system. And in order to keep the energy system running and in a safe way, we need a lot of grids. Currently, there's a lot of public debate, actually, because we have to always switch off wind turbines in order to keep the grid stable. And ideally, we would like to not switch them off and keep them running and have better grids. And I actually read something today that I wanted to share, that the International Energy Agency, they did a modeling and they called it the grid delay case. So if you are slow in building out the grids worldwide, you actually end up with almost 60 billion tons of CO2 emissions more between 2030 and 2050 than you would if you have an ambitious grid expansion. So like, I cannot overstate how important it is to have a very solid electricity grid to underpin the energy transition. And of course, yeah, that's also related to public acceptance of the energy transition. Public opposition in Germany has traditionally been pretty strong, and so for high voltage grids, this can mean that projects from planning to finishing can take more than 10 years. And it's obviously not in line with the speed that we need for the energy transition to hit our targets and stay below 1.5 degrees. How to deal with public opposition and how to make it really acceptable for the whole public in Germany is that you have early participation, you have a lot of transparency, and you also have a real possibility to influence the outcome. And something that's underused and what we're talking about today is also to really create local benefits so that the citizens see why we're doing this and can also have very local, very visible benefits. So, sorry, on the left, it's a protest, in case you didn't notice, just to show you what it might look like. And then I just wanted to give you a bit of context about where we are today in our project. So this is Germany. And Germany has, as I said, the phase out of coal. And we have in the east and in the west, we have two big coal regions. And today we are talking about the western one. So this is North-Rhein Westphalia. And if you zoom in there, here, this is North-Rhein Westphalia, you can already see that you can see on Google Maps, actually the coal mines, they are very, very visible. This is an area that's very close to the Dutch border, to the Belgian border, and also an area that lies between the north of Germany, where there's a lot of renewables, and the south of Germany, which has a lot of industry that needs electricity. So it's a key area for electricity grids that connect the different countries, but also the north and south of Germany. And then when you zoom in here, you can really see Cologne on the right-hand side. The city is a city. It has 1 million inhabitants, so it's not a small city that you see here. And so just to give you an idea of the scale of the coal mines, on the left, you can see the top one is sort of a former mine or it's being closed down, and then there's two still running. And this is where Hürth is. So the power line is running through there. And this is the moment I will hand over to Rolf, so he can tell you about his project.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Rolf Meier. I've been running the Agenda, a non-profit organization in Hürth, meanwhile for 4 years. The Agenda is, if you don't know it, a worldwide movement that aims to improve the influence of citizens on politics in their community and to pay more attention to ecological issues. The city garden was one of our first projects we started. The first step to the garden began 3 years ago in the middle of Corona epidemic. And you see here a widow. The main idea was to create an area for families who did not have their own garden, a place where they could grow their own vegetables and flowers and where they could benefit from being outdoors. Especially close to our hearts were the children who often associated vegetables alone with the supermarket. We choose the plot under the power line because it runs through the middle of an area with many high-rise buildings on the left and on the right. So there's a high population density in the area and no gardens. In the beginning, the area was nothing more than a large meadow. You see it on the picture. We quickly found local residents, here are some of them, who were interested to take over one of the 32 plots. The first task was to dig up their plot themselves, put in the first plants and plant seeds. That was a lot of work, but the first success soon became visible. Since then, the area has become a small oasis that attracts the interest of people who passes by and leads to many conversations. This was the first year with the first results. We have expected that vandalism would occur in the difficult local or social environment. That was never been the case. in the 3 years so far, only one pumpkin has disappeared. We don't know where it is. So I show you some picture about it and how it's developed.
There's the pumpkin.
That's a pumpkin. No, it's gone. So, what were the success factors of the project? Several permits had to be obtained, several from the city, among others things because the area was intended to be a compensation area for industrial settlement, in addition to discussion with the network operator and with operator of a gas pipeline that run under the site. That last, we need nearly half a year to take all the permissions. Of course, there were also conditions which we had to take into account, such as no garden houses could be erected and no trees could be planted. There was a very good cooperation with the city government. The permits were issued in a short time. The public utility company supplies us with water in the summer, and the discounter Penny in Germany allowed us to use the rainwater from the roof of its store. What we learned right at the beginning, never start a garden project without a water supply. It's difficult. The project has been described as a successful integration project. People from over 14 different nations work together in the garden. They learn a lot from each other about plants and their cultivation, and of course about how to deal with each other without cultural barriers. That's very important for us. Finally, we were also able to provide a little more biodiversity with the project, creating a colorful sea of plants from a simple meadow. So I can also present you our newest resident. Here it is, an earth tort. In short, much work at the beginning, but everything is going well. Meanwhile, the garden group manages its garden independently.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both so much for this wonderful presentation and this really inspiring story. I mean, I just think it's a fantastic initiative, so thank you. I have many questions. I'm sure the audience do too, but we will go into the discussion at the end. However, I would like to leave 1 minute now in case anyone from the audience has a comprehension question, anything you didn't understand that you'd like to be clarified before we get to the discussion. I see a question from Gwen about finance. I think I'll leave that one to the end, but is there anything that needs clarity? No? Okay. Then I'll give you a big thanks once again, and we'll go to the next speaker joining us from Brazil. This is Hans. Hans, I invite you to share your screen. And you're still muted just right now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome, Hans.
Hi, people. Hi, everyone. I'm really sorry to the delay. I have some technical problems here, but it's already solved.
It's all good. You're right on time. Are you able to share your screen?
Yeah, of course. Just give me a moment.
Okay, wonderful.
Let me open here better. So my name is Hans. I'm representing Cidades of Hunger from Brazil. I will introduce here about the work that we do here. The main problem that we're trying to solve here, of course, we are one of the many organizations trying to solve here, is because in Brazil we'll have despite the fact that Brazil is one of the main food producers in the world, in fact, but for internal market and for the poor population, the situation is really complicated here. So today, last year, the government made research about the hunger situation here in Brazil, and we discover that half of the population they have some kind of food insecurity, and almost 34 million people are in hunger situation here in Brazil. So this is a really complicated situation. Of course, this is a mix of crises that the country is coming from last 7 years, political, economical. So this have a lot of impact in the poor population. So the results are here. And today we have a big food inflation. This, of course, don't affect the higher stratas of society, but for the poor and now the middle class, the situation is really complicated. For example, we had in only 12 months more than 100% inflation in the basic kits of the food basket. So that is something. And why we try, Cities of Hunger, trying to fight these questions. In 2012, in 2010, in fact, we look for big spaces in the cities here in Brazil, and we start to have a partnership with the power line companies here, energy companies, and because they have big spaces in the poor areas of the city, and we wanted to use these spaces because already have a government regulation that we can use. Of course, we have some strict security rules, but we start working at those spaces that they are inside in the real crowded and populated poor neighborhoods here in Brazil, and we start working with this, and we'll have I work with this in 13 years. So the result is really interesting. Here is an example of the gardens that we have. As we select this big power transmission lines, the energy company leases these spaces for 10 years. And of course, we can renovate it all the time that we are still working, and they like that we work there. And we raise money from private companies. So we build the garden, we build all the spaces, we train the local people to work in those spaces. We construct all the physical structure. I will show this in another slide. And usually after 12 months, these spaces are producing enough food so then can maintain people working there in having basis monthly salaries. So this became a real social business here in Brazil, and this is supplying poor neighborhoods with food. This is a scheme. Usually the spaces are this size. It's like to 10,000 square meters and minimum. And we build the facilities, we build bathrooms, we build kitchens, we build tool houses, we'll build these big cisterns and irrigation systems, and we train local people to work, and we construct always in every garden a mini market, so the people produce in one side and sell on the other side, and use the local people to work. And as I told you, after 12 months, the garden now selling tons of food. So with this sales, we can keep these people working there like forever. So because this is a question here in Brazil. For example, in poor neighborhoods, people are having a lot of problems to get access to healthy food. Here, people are getting like the Americans, so something more industrialized, but of course, it's not good for health. And we develop a way that we can create jobs and improve the income in this poor community. So this is something really interesting because we are solving two problems. We're solving the unemployment, and we are solving we are supplying these poor neighborhoods with healthy food. And not only for private persons, but we supply local business, we supply public schools too. So this is the project that we are doing here, and today the results of this project in under this gardens under transmission lines, we have 17 urban fines these days. Usually each have 35 workers, so today we have more than 400 people working under these power lines. Almost half of them are women. We pay monthly salaries. They have social benefits to work there like a normal job. We produce more than 100 tons of food every month in these gardens, and all these productions is sold at low prices, in a price that people can buy. Today we have 21 communities supplied by these 17 urban farms. We have some developments here because you always want to use less water in irrigation, because we know in irrigation is one of the things that most spend water in agriculture, and we have zero emissions, CO2 emissions in the transport. This is a big issue here in São Paulo because the city is really big. So to transport food from one side to another, of course, we have these emissions, and we have none. This is about the founder, Hans Dieter. He's my father. He's on vacation right now, healthy vacation, in a health vacation. That's why I'm representing here. He's a Brazilian. Our family is original from Germany. He studied in Tübingen University, and when he came back here to Brazil, and he always worked in the private sector, but he always get interested in solve these problems in some way, and he brings all the technical knowledge that he learned in Germany to use here in these spaces here. And now in 2024 we'll celebrate 20 years. This project started when he worked in the mayor's office many years ago, and after that the government didn't want to carry on this urban garden project, so my father preferred to found an NGO to carry on the work. And today he's one of the main voices about this theme of urban agriculture here in Brazil, because no one cares about this until 2015, and now everyone is speaking about this because, of course, everyone understands that this is a way that you can create the jobs and income and supply the cities with healthy food. Here, Brazil is a continental country, so make no sense to supply the big cities with producing food so far from the consumer areas. This is some photos that we have in our garden, so we can have more details about the system that we developed there. This is the community, one of the communities that we supply. We never have for example, you always work with strict rules from the energy company, and they have this government regulations. So we never had, in more than 10 years of working in this, any problem. And it is really interesting because we don't use pesticides, we don't use defensives. So despite we have some big agricultural company supporters, but we always say that we want to produce this in the more healthy way that we can. This is one of the photos. The spaces are really big and they are really productive. People, every time the people come, they get really impressed of the quantity of food we can produce in these spaces, because but we develop a way that we can do it. That we have some bathrooms, we have kitchens for the workers, we have places to change, places to rest. It's like a normal farm, but inside the city. Here is the cistern. We kept water from the roofs. We kept the water from wells. We don't use the public system for irrigation. We have a data that we have using 70% less water than the normal agriculture. This is interesting. This is in these bags is a kind of natural fertilizer that we mix a lot of things. Use we compost this, and a company make this mix and give it to us. We can show them here, and it's really interesting because it's a natural waste, and we mix everything and go to some kind of warehouse that they may develop this kind of mud, and we put there in the gardens, and it works really well in terms of, it's a natural fertilizer. This is another people that work with is in this garden. And this is some photos of the mini market, that every garden have a mini market, so to sell the production. And so about the Cities Down Hunger today, we have 3 projects these days. We have these urban farms all over the city. We have here in São Paulo, we have in Cubatão, in a littoral of Brazil, and they have in Porto Alegre. We have another project that's the school gardens. We construct the school gardens in public schools to improve the nutrition of our children's meals. And we have another one that we're giving credit and technical knowledge for small farmers. And this is the impact that we are having in our farms, the school gardens, and these family farms. We always want them to produce tons of food in a sustainable way, giving access for this food for the people that are most in need. And this is the place that we are. And in Brazil and in São Paulo and in Cubatão and Porto Alegre. This is all our main supporters, so we don't use public money to construct all the spaces. We always trying to make the private sector or the government or national or international foundations to work with us. And this is some of the prizes that we earn for all these almost 20 years that we are working in these projects. So thank you. This is the general presentation.
Thank you so much, Hans, for this excellent introduction to the work that you guys are doing, and really congratulations. I mean, to look at some of those figures is crazy. I think you said you have 12 gardens ongoing. This employs 420 people. The tons of healthy, organic, locally produced food. The impact you're having on local well-being, on food security, is really wonderful. Yeah. I have a lot of questions as well, and I'm sure in the audience I see a few more as well. But like I said, the discussion will come after the next presentation. So first of all, I will give 1 minute for any comprehension questions. So dear audience members, was there anything that Hans said that you didn't understand and need clarity on? Okay. Apparently not. Then we'll save the audience questions for the discussion. Thanks again, Hans. And I'll now pass on to our final speaker, Byron. Welcome, Byron, joining us from Colorado in the US. Byron, you're welcome to go ahead and share your screen. I know it's early morning for you as well, so thanks very much for joining us right now. And yeah, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thanks, Liam. Well, yeah, it's 8 a.m. here. Morning to everyone. Hope everything is going well where y'all are. My name is Byron Kominek, owner and manager of Jack Solar Garden here in Boulder County, Colorado, and also the director of our nonprofit, the Colorado Agrivoltaic Learning Center. I like to talk about my family's past. My family has a 24-acre farm here in Boulder County, where my grandfather Jack, pictured there in 1971 with my mother, he bought this land. It's about 24 acres. He used to be a farmer on other people's land and had his own land. He had 120 acres where my mother was born, that she grew up on a farm, but he was a farmer all his life. And I'm in the process of inheriting the land that he bought in 1972. To continue on the tradition of some level of farming. But when I moved out here in 2016, the main type of farming activities we did was haying. Hay is grass. Straw comes from cereals. It's the byproduct of wheat, barley, things like that, whereas hay is just grass cutting. I don't know how profitable it was when my grandfather alive, but it is not profitable for us now. We were losing money on our farm every single year for years, and we needed to figure out a different solution. So I went to our local government to talk about the different opportunities that we would have. Instead of producing 1,000 bales each year, that could make us a total of $10,000 annual revenue, when our property taxes are $3,500 every year, $1,500 in electricity and gas bills, $2,000 for the rights to use water for our land, and then probably about $1,000 of upkeeping the equipment to hay. We had very little money left over, if anything. So we went about the process of seeing if we could first put our land into a conservation easement, which the county said we could not. We were too small. They offered us opportunities to have thousands of chickens, which I didn't want to chase around 5,000 chickens. They offered up having a Christmas tree farm or equestrian center, nothing I was overly interested in, until a friend of mine told me that our land was on nice flat land adjacent to a 3-phase electricity line that would allow us to be able to tie in a solar array. So we should look into what it would be like to put a 1 megawatt solar array on our farm to be able to produce power, make some money for our family, and help out the local government. We took that idea to Boulder County, our government, and said, we want to build this. And they said, no, your land is for farming. So, you know, go back to it. And I argued with them for a while. That was starting in 2017 and until the end of 2018. They changed their land use code so that we could build this. It changed it so that any other farm in our county could also build a solar array of similar size. We won a bid with our local utility to tie in our grid tie in a solar array to their grid. And 2019, we figured out the business plan. 2020, we financed it and built the solar array. So on November 1st of 2020 is when we were able to energize. But if you came to our farm, this would be the first sign you see. We took this north pasture that's about 8 acres, put in over 2,000 of these steel I-beams into the ground, put up 3,276 solar panels, and created a 1.2 megawatt DC 960 kilowatt AC system. The entire electrical infrastructure covers about 5 acres of land. The solar panels cover just over 4 acres of land. It produces enough power for about 300 homes in our area. The panels, this is a single axis tracking system, so the panels go from east to west over the course of the day. And what happens is that we have sun and shade that cycle over our field. So nowhere gets full sun, nowhere gets full shade. This provides an opportunity for us to grow different types of crops that wouldn't otherwise be able to grow here throughout our very hot growing season. If you don't know much about Colorado, in the middle of the summer, it can get up close to 40 degrees Celsius. I'm assuming this is all European, so I'll throw out the Celsius. And then in the wintertime, it can get down to -20 Celsius. Those are our extremes. So having a little bit of shade during the hottest months to be able to grow crops is not a bad idea. Just some more imagery overhead of what we were able to grow or do with our space. We used tractors to be able to work within the solar array to till up, to rip and till the land so that we could create crop beds for a nonprofit called Sprout City Farms to grow crops. So from 2021 through 2023, they've been growing a variety of different types of vegetables on about 2 acres of land underneath our solar panels. Please note the height of the panels where these women are. When the panels are flat, for the majority of our property, it's about 6.5 feet tall, so just over 2 meters. And then in another portion of the solar array gets up to about 2.5 meters. So space for people and machinery to be able to operate. And they've grown lots and lots of vegetables over the past few years. I would say they're on the order of over 20,000 pounds of vegetables grown underneath our solar panels, from carrots, eggplant, kale, tomatoes, radishes, beets, turnips, garlic, bok choy, celery, arugula, spinach, you name it, they've been growing it. We also work with researchers from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, Colorado State University, and University of Arizona to learn more about the microclimates created by these solar panels. So as the panels move throughout the course of the day, you can see that the sun and shade cycle over the field. So there's some plants that get morning sun, some plants that get afternoon sun. Some plants get about 70% of daily sunlight. Some plants get about 50% of daily sunlight. Those closer to the edges of the panels get water redistributed to them so they can have either more moisture during the wintertime as the snow piles up and melts off when the panels are facing to the east. And we get our rainfall in the afternoons in Colorado during the summertime when the panels would be facing to the west. So we find that there's a redistribution of water, and this impacts how well different types of crops grow. We're testing out not just a variety of crops, but also varieties of varietals of crops so that we can learn more about which variety does best in which of these microclimates. Because if we can figure out that our yellow tomatoes do better in the bed that is on the east edge of the solar panel, while our red tomatoes do better on the west edge of the solar panel, why would we ever plant them anywhere else? We've optimized their growth, so you grow them there. And so this is Amy Marble, a researcher that's actually harvesting the tomatoes, the peppers, the beans, all the rest of it, to be able to weigh them, to learn more about where do these different varieties grow best. So we have the statistical data to be able to show that over time. Agricultural sciences takes a long time. I think you have to have a minimum of 3 years of data to be able to publish. And that is a Herculean effort out here. So they've been collecting data for a few years now. They need to determine if their early years were good enough data and if they need to continue growing. But I like to mention too, that depending on where you grow the crops, not only does it impact how well does that crop grow, it impacts the flavor. And so it's been fun to taste test the different tomatoes and carrots and beets and turnips to see how it changes over the course of the day. So we find that some of the morning, some of the crops like the tomatoes that are getting the morning sunlight, like you can see in this picture on the right-hand side, we've found that some of those tomatoes taste more watery, while the tomatoes in the middle bed taste just like normal outside of the solar array. And the tomatoes on the west side that get afternoon sunlight, but morning sun or morning shade, they taste more acidic. And that may not be as interesting for tomatoes. It might have an impact on canning purposes. You want tomatoes to be more acidic when you can them because of getting rid of botulism. But think about if that happens with vineyards too. Now you might put your Chardonnay where you have more watery tomatoes, and you might put your Pinots where it's a little bit more acidic. Fun to think about. We also work with researchers from Colorado State University to look at how our grassland underneath our solar panels is impacted. So they've measured how soil moisture changes throughout the solar array from east side of the panels to the west side and directly underneath the panels. They've looked at how well does the grass grow, looking at the nutrient values, how water stressed are the grasses at different spots during the over the course of the day. And one of the things that we found is this one type of grass, mountain smooth brome. It's a Eurasian grass. It's not native to here. We lose about 9% of our total grass coverage underneath our solar panels. And we also lose about 5% of our total nutritional value. Now that's when I talk about losing. Now you could think about, I have 100% of the possible renewable energy above ground, and I have 91% of the possible grass and 95% of its nutritional value. I feel like that's a pretty good win on that side, because I get more money off of selling the electricity than I do off of selling that grass. And the grass is still able to have habitat for rabbits, for birds, and be able to sequester carbon over time. Here are images of researchers collecting the biomass to be able to do that type of study. We've also found that the grass roots grow just as well underneath our solar panels as it does outside of the solar array. And yet we are emitting less carbon from our grasslands underneath our solar panels versus outside. We have researchers over the past 3 years who have been using a LICOR measurement device that measures the amount of CO2 emitting from the ground at 78 different points in the grassland to see how much it's producing CO2 versus outside the solar array. We are working with a company called Wish Garden Herbs to learn more about how we can grow different types of herbal plants that could be of economic value, like yarrow, silver sage, clary sage. There's Monarda, and my girlfriend with motherwort at our feet. These are opportunities to have perennial herbs within our solar array. One fun thing that we like to share is she loves Italian oregano. She doesn't like our normal oregano. So she wanted me to plant Italian oregano, and we did so. So we put it in that west bed, the middle bed, and the east bed. It died in the east bed completely because it's a warmer climate. It prefers a warmer climate than what we have. So it died in the east bed. In the middle bed, it was about 75% death. And then on the west bed, it was 100% success. And I believe it's because the snow falls on the panels during the wintertime and dumps off on the east edge and creates an insulation layer on top of the oregano. It's a perennial plant, so it helps to protect the roots from our cold freezes. and it comes back to life and we keep harvesting it. So I don't have to plant it again there, but she forces me to replant it in the other places. We can support the arts within solar arrays. Just like you were seeing from Hans, you can have people within underneath electrical lines and it's not going to kill them. We can also have people within a solar array. So we sponsor different artists over the years to figure out how to have community within our solar array. I like to show off some of the pictures from a photographer that we had come out here, hiring models to put within our solar array, to just show how else we can use the space within our solar garden. And it just shows that people can be here too. It doesn't have to be thought of as a terrible utility space that is dead and dying, like oftentimes is done, where people just spray herbicides underneath the panels or just clear the land and keep it to dirt. But we can keep it healthy, we can keep it active. We also bring out kids. We have lots of high school students. We've been starting to bring out younger students to visit our solar array to learn more about solar energy as well as agriculture and the microclimates that are created therein. And we hope this helps us build community from having different events where we have musicians, kids, volunteers, folks coming out into our solar array to learn more about how we can use this space, keep it useful. And we're starting to showcase more about what else can be done. So bringing animals out there. People have seen sheep in solar arrays, check that box. We haven't seen as many chickens. If you have pictures and videos of chickens in solar arrays, I'm looking forward to it. But we get excited about having cattle. In the US, we have 90+ million cattle. We have about 5 or 6 million sheep. Figuring out how to have cattle within a solar array is of importance to keep our ranch lands viable into the future, so that we just don't take over all this traditional ranch land and turn it into solar panels, and then our country has less meat and we rely more on centralized agricultural facilities where the cows are not living a good life as opposed to being out on the rangeland. We share a variety of different terminology, from how dual use is just anything with solar panels to agri-solar is solar with farming to help out farming agendas, whereas agrivoltaics is that co-location. You have solar panels above agriculture so that microclimates can be used. And our researchers are starting to use the term ecovoltaics, where it's this co-prioritization of solar with ecosystem services. Whoops. We offer education opportunities, so we have webinars on a regular basis, solar developer workshops. We provide online resources. If you haven't taken a look, go onto our website, check out our various videos to learn more. And hopefully you see how we can keep lands within solar arrays useful over a long period of time. But thanks for your attention. There's the website if you want to grab more information about what we do. And I will stop my share, Liam.
Thank you so much, Byron. This project, we became aware of it a couple of years ago, and really it's one of my favorites to talk about. I mean, it's just such a good example of how to combine these different activities, right? I mean, it's really a symbiotic relationship that you have there between energy and food production, but also the community. And some of the figures you said are just so obviously a good thing. I mean, not only are you able to have healthy grasslands, which is a habitat, you're able to have all of the extra benefit and all of the extra profit from electricity, plus to harvest so many crops and to sell those, and then to have people there as well, bring people close to the land and seeing how energy is produced and how food is farmed. I think this is maybe one of the aspects which is less talked about such projects where people come close to energy infrastructure, but maybe one of the most important aspects. Something as well that you said, Hans, about people tend to associate food, or was it maybe you even, Rolf? People tend to associate food with the supermarket, but by actually bringing people onto the land, you create a connection between the vital food stuff that you eat and the land. The same thing is true about energy infrastructure. By bringing people close to the infrastructure, you create an understanding for what it means to use electricity, for what the energy transition means. And in terms of education, awareness, connection to the earth, this is extremely valuable. So Yeah, well done, guys. I think you're all doing fantastically. I'll move on to the questions because there's really quite a lot here. I have many, but I'll start with the ones in the audience. And the first one that came in was from Gwen van der Schnee from Tenet TSO, and it was about the financing. Gwen, if you'd like to put your video on, unmute yourself and ask your question. I believe it was for Rolf.
Yeah. No, I was just wondering because I suppose there are some costs related to this your project and how who is financing them.
Yeah, if I may, I will answer for us. Thank you for the question. So the land is actually owned by the city, and the TSO that has the grids on there pays a fee to the city to use the land. And so the garden actually doesn't have to pay anything for the land, which would probably be the biggest cost factor. And then the agenda, so the initiative that Rolf chairs, is funded by donations. So initially, the first steps were financed with some donations to the initiative, and then of course the people who work on the land put in also their own money, as you would in any garden, to make it prosper. And actually, my father is a passionate gardener himself, so he provided many of the small plants and seeds, so as like a start. So actually, it doesn't really need a lot of money, and the land factor would be the biggest cost, and that was not an issue.
Thank you, Hannah. Maybe while we're on the topic, maybe Hans, you can answer the same question. How are your gardens financed? Who owns the lands there? I'm sure Gwen would be interested.
Hi, the lands are leased to us from the public spaces sometimes. In the case of the energy companies, they lease the spaces to us usually from 10 years to start, but they always renovate it. Because we need these big spaces, and most of all the public spaces are the private sector that have it. So that's why we're always looking for these big spaces here, and that's why we have relations with this energy companies. And also in terms of finance, we always raising money from here in Brazil is a poor country, of course, so we try to not use the private person's money. So we think that is better for the companies, foundations to finance us to develop these projects. Of course, the companies want to add our projects to their social impact index that the reports they need to do. But that's how we finance these days. Incredibly, in fact, one of our projects, the school garden projects, most of the donations, this is the only part of donations that we have, came from Germany. It's like 4%, 49% is financed for German donations. But the most of the gardens are financed for private companies or foundations.
Thank you very much. Gwen, does that answer your question? Yes. Okay. Pedro from Gen, the Portuguese TSO, you asked a question about land ownership. I believe your question was answered, but I'd still like to give you the opportunity. If you'd like to add anything, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for this inspiring projects. It's great to know them, and hopefully trying to adapt them here in Portugal. Yes, but my question is already answered, so thank you so much.
Okay, maybe while we are on the topics of grid operations, one of the questions that I certainly have is that when you see projects like this, it kind of seems like a no-brainer, right? It seems like, why aren't we doing this everywhere? But of course, there are questions about safety, about permitting processes. And this, of course, from a grid operator perspective, is vitally important. You know, grid operators still need to be able to access the grid in case of maintenance, and they can't have too tall trees interfering with the grids. So I guess a question that I would have, maybe first of all to you, Rolf and Johanna, would be, what are the kind of the safety regulations that are in place? What happens if the grid operator needs to access the land? And how did these discussions go with the grid operator?
Yeah, I think Rolf already mentioned some of them. So they're not allowed to build permanent structures. So any houses are not allowed, and tall trees are not allowed. And if the network operator needs to do some repair work, also they will inform them in advance so that they can provide the space. But actually, I think the main part of the garden is in between pylons, so that they can easily access the pylons if they need to.
Thank you. Hans, is there anything else that you'd like to add on safety or permitting?
Yeah, here in Brazil, the work under these power lines are regulated here for the government. So depending of the size of the tower, so they explain to you exactly what you can grow under them. So, and of course, we need to be open all the time when the energy company wants to make some kind of maintaining some work in the towers or in the lines. And they have a lot of regulations. For example, when it's raining in here, the storms are really crazy and strong. So all the people that are working, they need to get out of the garden. So that's why we construct this places. They can rest and wait there until any storm go out. So they have a lot of regulations, of course, but we never had no kind of accident here. So that's why, and we are really strict about these rules.
Okay, thank you very much. If you allow me just to continue down this thread, because I find it really interesting. Also, I'm aware that there's some grid operators in the room, so feel free, any of you from the grid operators, to jump in. One of the topics that we deal with at RGI is vegetation management around the grid, right? So this means that the grid operators have to remove tall trees from underneath the grid to ensure that no trees interfere with the power lines. And we're seeing some really innovative projects from across the world, some really nice ones from Germany, from Holland, from Belgium, Spain and Portugal as well, whereby grid operators work with people on the ground to do ecological projects underneath the power lines, to manage this vegetation in an ecological way, which means rather than just removing all vegetation from underneath power lines, you can plant productive orchards or flowering bushes, or dig ponds, or plant Christmas trees so that the landowners can then harvest the Christmas trees. We've seen in some projects, for example, from Portugal, that these trees that can be planted can then have a benefit for the landowners harvesting them. I find this a really, really exciting initiative, and it's something that like I said, we work on a lot. I guess my question for anyone in the room is it a viable option that gardening projects like this could, even on a small scale or a large scale, present an alternative to vegetation management? And anyone is welcome to answer this question. It's just amusing.
For our perspective, for example, we always need to be restricted in terms of the height of the trees, for example. So we have some gardens that plant fruit. So we have orange trees, lemon trees, and banana trees that people like a lot here. But of course, they can pass from the terminal height. So this is something that are under the regulations. My dad especially, he really loves to have these natural foods here in Brazil are called planks. I don't know how to translate this to English, but it's some kind of a natural food, natural plants here that we can eat. And he always trying to keep this plants in the gardens. So so the only thing that people are concerned here is in terms of the height of the trees. So they don't want it never to touch the lines. So this is the main concern. For example, we have some years ago, we have some problem here because some gardens are big banana producers, for example, and the energy companies say, no, but the bananas, for example, during the dry seasons, they are so dry, and in case of any storm or the tower fall, they can set fire. So this is a main concern, but this problem never happened. So we try to plan them. It's too much technical for me, but it's in a way that in any case of tower fall, that they will not hit this kind of trees. So this is the safety concerns that we have with these plants.
Okay, thank you very much. So mainly about safety and height there. Would anyone else like to add anything to this? Otherwise, there are many questions, so I can move on.
Well, maybe because your question was if it's a feasible option, and I should, well, as the example show, of course, it is, but also to say in a European situation, I definitely think that it could solve the problems that we are facing, and that also were mentioned with the progress. With the extension of our grids and the acceptance by the public on this, we really need to look for alternatives, also to look for plans that we can make these plans for setting out the grid also attractive for people that live in the surroundings. So these are I think could be really good options for this.
Okay, that's a great message. Thank you for that, Gwen. Anyone else like to chip in?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
On safety, that's something that we're always concerned about within our solar array. We have rules for our farmers of keeping equipment like your hose, your shovels, anything not on your shoulder, but at your hip height, so that if you sling something over your shoulder, it doesn't hit a solar panel. We ask for no spray paint, no smoking in the solar array. We put little foam bumpers at the edges of the solar panels in case somebody walks by and they might hit their head on the solar panel. So you put a little piece of foam there and they'll knock it and it won't hurt them. We put there's spaces within the solar array where there's breaks in between the solar panels, that there's wires that go in between them. And we dangle little flags down because people are wearing hats to keep the sun out of their eyes and they're looking down. And so they won't see the wire hit them in the head. But if there's a flag there, then they can see that and know that it's time to duck to move underneath the solar panel. We have the same regulations as what Hans was talking about. If there's a storm coming through, if there's lightning in the area, we within 8 miles, we tell people to exit the solar array. They stay underneath they stay in our barn until it passes. We also talk about building the solar array for safety purposes for people and machinery. The taller you can build them, the safer it is, because that means less interaction between vehicles, people, and the panels. 2, you have good, clean wire management. If you have wires all over the place, people are going to interact with it. Animals are going to interact with it. Equipment is going to interact with it. So you don't want any interaction with wires. You have to keep the panel, the wires tucked up or flush against the steel I-beams or in conduit, anything to keep them adjacent to all of the other infrastructure out there as best as possible. And that will keep people and your equipment safer.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, I think these are all small steps that you can take, right, to make this safe operation work. So maybe what we need then is just kind of a more open mind and more collaboration between industry and civil society to get these things off the ground. I mean, you guys prove that it is possible with a bit of care and with some safety precautions. So yeah, thanks for that. I see a question in here from my colleague Roland for Byron. It's about legally stopping cropping farming and relying on solar energy production. It's an income question. Roland, if you'd like to go ahead and ask this question, you're very welcome to.
Yeah, thanks a lot to everyone for your really inspiring presentations and great initiatives. Yeah, just to understand Byron, because I got triggered by this case in Bulgaria recently. I read on the news and I thought, what's the case in the US? Do you have to maintain both activities running, or what is the legal requirement? Since previously this was agriculture land, as I understood, and you touched upon really shortly that it was a bit of a challenge with authorities to include solar panels. Thank you.
Yeah. So the US has 50 states. Within each of those states, there's numerous counties. We have over 3,000 counties in our country. each county gets to decide what they allow and what they don't allow for siting solar or on agricultural land. Some communities don't care, and so they put solar panels anyhow. Some communities do care, and they won't allow solar on farmland. Some communities are learning about agrivoltaics, and so they're trying to figure out what type of regulations that allow for the two together and not allow the solar array without the agriculture. But it's at the very beginning of these counties figuring this out. One of our nonprofits goals is to come up with model land use code language that we can share next year, after having done an analysis of all the 64 counties in Colorado as to how they currently allow for solar siting on farmland. So hopefully sometime next year, we'll have that available publicly to share with how different communities in our state, across the country, and around the world can look at how to put solar arrays on farmland so that the two can go together.
Okay.
Thank you.
Willing to answer your question?
Thanks a lot.
So I'd like to tap in on something that all of you kind of mentioned. Johanna, you introduced this right at the start about how important public acceptance is for the energy transition. Rolf, you said this before, there was nothing on this land. Okay, I'm introducing this in a strange way. My question is, how do people's perceptions of energy infrastructure and grids change once these projects are underway? That means, do people, or have you guys heard in your experiences, and this is a question to everyone, that people feel differently about infrastructure when they spend more time around it? And could there be, yeah, I mean, I'm interested in any stories you can say about how people actually feel about the land they're working on. And are there any maybe strange feelings? Do people complain about being so close to energy infrastructure? Does it become invisible, or do they appreciate it? I think that's my question.
Well, when I started this work more than 10 years ago, of course, I have some kind of concern about how working under this power lines. But after 10 years and no kind of accident that we had, and people trying to enjoy it because they see these big spaces, because they are inside the poor neighborhoods, space that first, this space is usually before we enter that, before they're leased to us, the people in these neighborhoods use it to put trash and put all kinds of debris that you can imagine. And this is attract rats and track any kind of this, every kind of disease you can imagine. After the public saw that we clean the spaces and start to put the people to working there, and the spaces become a place to increase the food availability for the neighborhood. People start working, and now this became a model here. So the public perception completely changed. And since we never had an accident and all the spaces have a lot of infrastructure for the workers, so everyone's liking that. That's became a kind of trend here in Brazil. We have another state here in Brazil, another company, energy company. She makes her whole program of urban agriculture under the power lines is really big in the state of Paraná. And this became a trend. Started as a threat and people are afraid of, but after 10 years, everyone is liking because it's the only big space available in big cities like ours.
Thank you, Hans. And I imagine the neighbors were happy about less rats being around as well. That's
They are really, every time we start to develop another garden, so people are coming and wanting to work there and want to know where will the mini market will be. So this is a really good thing.
Yeah, it sounds it. Thank you very much. Johanna, Rolf, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, we do not have we don't have any numbers or data to back this up, so we can just share a sentiment. So Hürth, or this grid line in particular, was recently, so in the past 4 or 5 years, reinforced. So the pylons were taken down and higher ones were put up. And there was a really big public opposition locally against it. And obviously it's just empty, or it was just empty space, so there's no really any use for it. And so my father just told me that, so anything he sees on the daily basis is when people come by, everybody's has very positive reactions and says, oh, it's so great and it's just useless space. So I'm happy that this is happening. Of course, you're never going to convince everybody. And there's always, you know, the hardcore opposers are always going to oppose. But I think that the shift in the general public, I don't know if there's a shift, but they definitely see the use of the space as a positive outcome.
Yeah, that's great. And these small stories that you report for sure positively impact. I mean, if you can scale this up, this can definitely have impacts on improving people's perception and creating acceptance for the energy transition, I imagine. Same question to you, Byron.
I'd say we convince the majority of people that come out here. It's fun to see the skeptics in our parking lot, and then we walk out into the solar array and you see that change in their eyes, like, oh shit, this is possible. Okay, right on. I didn't know that. They see the vegetation growing, they see the perennials growing. We had some fellas from Texas that had the big broad brim hat. They were cattle ranchers. They stone face, they come out into the solar array, they're looking around. We talk about vegetables, they don't care. We get down to the grasslands area where they can see having cattle within that space, and I show them a picture of cattle that we had out there, and their mind changes. Then they say, okay, now I can see how this can be useful to me. So with having our space where we have berry bushes, herbs, vegetables, grasses, education, all these different things, everybody can find something that they appreciate within the solar array and within the work that we do.
Can I add something, Liam? So I think it's important, if I just said that they actually, so the mayor is very much behind it, and the city is very much behind it, and they even won a prize for biodiversity. And I think in the end, it's about changing the narrative, right? It's not just saying, oh, we can have the energy transition versus nature, but we can really create benefits. Energy transition is not just a bad thing and brings a lot of burdens, but you can really see that we have a community garden. Why do we have it? Because the energy transition is happening. So that for me is like an important point.
I can only agree with what you just said. This is like my bread and butter, trying to spread that message that the energy transition is compatible with nature. And I mean, it brings another dimension to it when you bring people on board as well. And it just shows that these initiatives need to come from both sides, right? It requires the industry to be interested, to be open to changing their mindset, but it also requires kind of innovative ideas from people like you, Rolf, from people like you, Byron, Hans, Johanna, to get things started, to look for interested people, and to just, to make it happen, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So, yeah, that's a really inspiring.
Today we pressure all the energy companies here in Brazil to try to finance and put this program in a national basis, because here in Brazil we have millions of kilometers of these empty spaces that could be used to produce food that generate jobs and income and give more healthy food for people from poor neighborhoods. So we have millions of kilometers that we could do that. Today, okay, everyone say, oh my God, we are so big. No, in fact, we only have 17 spaces. We could do far more.
Yeah, exactly. The potential is endless. And the same has been studied in terms of using these spaces for biodiversity, right? There is literally a network that goes across continents with millions of kilometers. And if we take a more ecological approach or a more community-based approach to managing this land, what that means for ecosystems, for biodiversity restoration, but also for the interconnectivity of species, especially because of huge levels of migration because of climate change. You know, in Europe, we're seeing species moving north. There's been studies in Belgium and in Spain that have seen butterflies using these corridors, these grid corridors, to migrate north. Yeah, it's true, Hans, what you said. The potential is endless. We have with us Olena from a Ukrainian energy company. Olena, we've worked together on the topic of birds, and it's nice to see you here on this topic as well. Olena has a question about using substations for farming. Now, this is maybe more of a question for the grid operators in the room, but Olena, if you would like to turn your video on and ask your question, or else I can ask it for you. But the question is it possible? There you are. I see you, Olena. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you very much. Good day, everyone. Thank you very much for interesting event. I have a question about substations, because there are a lot of substations, and how can we use this land?
Okay, so I have one answer on that, but I would also like to open the floor to any grid operators in the room, or anyone really who has experience with managing the land around substations. Olena, you suggested maybe herding sheep, but does anyone else have any other experiences around substations?
Yes, I can give you some input. In Portugal, we have two examples. We have one substation is inside the urban area, and we develop with the local municipality the rural farms, such as we saw it right here under the power lines, but in this case, in our property that is allocated to the substation. One other example is that we are planting some autochthonous trees, such as strawberry tree, in order to produce fruits, and that way we can show also to the community that it's possible to obtain some incomes from that areas.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro. I can also share a practice that I know from the Netherlands, where they've used the area around substations to take on alternate mowing systems to create islands of biodiversity for butterflies, and the results there are really fantastic. I believe, Gwen, actually, this is your organization. You're welcome to chip in. But I know that this was a partnership with an NGO, and you had the ecologists there. Would you like to say anything on that?
Yeah, that's actually our project. Yeah. Well, we since then, since we started this pilot project, we made it bigger, and also to make it our standard way of maintenance of the surroundings of substations, because I don't see that many possibilities for cattle, because that's some areas you wouldn't want to have animals walking around in these substations. These are really this could cause problems, but well, this kind of ecological maintenance and mowing really, and indeed we did measurements, and it increased the insect population significantly. Yeah.
Thank you, Gwen, for sharing your experience there. Olena, I can tell you as well that we're working with grid operators at the moment to kind of collect experiences with integrated vegetation management from TenneT. We will be talking about this wonderful management of the land around substations for butterflies, and we'll be releasing a report very soon in the next months on this to share experiences from across Europe. And it's true. I mean, the land around substations is massive. Of course, there's huge safety issues and concerns there, but why not undertake maybe some mowing differences or some nature inclusive design to really maximize the use of this area? Okay. We have 10 minutes left, and I see Naomi just added a comment. We're looking into this in Scotland around our substations. Safety is the key issue when it comes to any other kind of growing or community use. Yeah, for sure. Naomi, you're welcome to add something if you'd like to.
Yeah, no, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I'm not able, for some reason, I can't get my camera to turn on. But yeah, that's basically something we're looking in, is enhancing biodiversity around all of our substations at Scottish Power's network. But yeah, it's safety that's sort of the key issue in terms of stuff that happens at substations. But when it comes to like the network and our overhead lines and things, we're definitely looking at more community engagement style projects and working with landowners and things like that as well. But yeah, the key challenge, I guess, with
that's great to hear. Let's stay in touch. I will send you an email. I'd love to hear more. That's really, really nice.
No, that would be good.
Lovely. Then in the last 10 minutes, I'd like to open the floor generally to anyone else who has additional questions. Any one of our speakers who'd like to add anything. We can gladly also finish early, but I just think it's great while we have everyone in the room. If you have any inspiration or other things you'd like to share, then please do go ahead. Okay.
I'm sorry, the question is for us or for the guests?
For anyone who'd like to add anything.
Oh, so just finishing here. So thank you for receiving me. I think the idea and discussing other experiences is really great, and the projects that Rolf and Byron and Johanna have, they are huge and really interesting and different that we had here. So it's good to have new ideas, and this kind of use of this land can be a huge life changing in the lives of the people that are working there. For example, you work in poor communities and have some people that never have normal salaries and people that never are having access for normal food anymore. So these projects, they can change their access to income, change their give them access to healthy food. So if you have more support in terms of not only about the public, but about from the energy companies to lease more lands of this and make this project really, this kind of project really huge, because they have, as Liam mentioned, millions of kilometers of land. So this is first we need this land access, and there's this land across the communities that you want to act. So that is something that one day I hope there will be a big and normal thing to do in this land inside the big cities.
Thank you, Hans.
Maybe we can also say thank you for the invitation, and also we've been really impressed with your operations and the scale of it. And actually, Rolf has been making a list of things that he could test out, and he was very inspired by the stories that you told us. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay. Well, then I can just finish on this note that we will continue this series of webinars. We run these kind of every couple of months. My colleague Eston's just posted a link in the chat, and you can stay up to date if you sign up for this link with all future events. And really the purpose of what we're trying to do here is to create a community of practices with things like this. I mean, this is really, I think, key. If we're going to move towards more inclusive, more nature-close energy transition, then we need exchanges like this. So please keep joining, please spread the word. We'll be covering this on social media as well. So feel free, if you're on LinkedIn, if you're on Twitter, to follow us, to share the news. But I would just like to give a huge thanks to the speakers. You were all excellent, and to the audience as well for taking the time to join us here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you all. Bye.
Bye, everyone.